A week before I was supposed to marry Ethan Carter, the woman he loved deeply, Luna Thompson, got divorced. He brought her to me and said he wanted to call off our engagement. Tiffany Nguyen, I don't want to force myself. No matter how hard you try, you'll never be her. I left calmly, chopped off my long hair, changed into a bold biker outfit, and returned to the world that had always belonged to me. He laughed with his friends. Who would ever like a wild girl like that? She's not the kind of woman you marry. But then a photo spread like wildfire across high society. A slender, pale hand rested on the chest of the most arrogant heir in the jewelry world. His tattooed, muscular arm was wrapped tightly around a woman's waist, and the chemistry between them seemed to pour right out of the screen. Finally, Ethan called me. Who is he? But the reply that came wasn't mine. It was a deep, lazy male voice. Your ex, huh? Let me introduce myself. I'm her legal husband. Now, let me tell you my story. I was at a bridal boutique, trying on my wedding dress for the final fitting. In just 2 weeks, I was supposed to marry Ethan Carter. Even though the gown had been custom-made, it still felt a bit tight around the bust and waist. As I stepped into the fitting room for some adjustments, I suddenly heard a conversation outside. The voices grew clearer with every word. Did you know? Ethan Carter's ex-girlfriend, Luna Thompson, got divorced and just came back to the country. I remember 3 years ago, when she broke up with him, he was completely devastated. Yeah, if it hadn't been for Tiffany Nguyen showing up and helping him through that dark time, who knows if he ever would have moved on. Who's Tiffany Nguyen? She's that rebellious little princess from high society. Can you believe she actually made Ethan Carter so obedient? But now that Luna's suddenly back, do you think the wedding will still happen? The invitations are already sent out. If the ceremony gets cancelled, they'll be the biggest joke in town. When their chatter finally faded, I took off the wedding dress that no longer fit me and called Ethan. But he didn't answer. Amid the noise of laughter and conversation, I could still clearly hear his voice. What a poor imitation, Tiffany. No matter how hard you try, you'll never measure up to even a finger of Luna. Someone chimed in, laughing, but everyone used to say Tiffany was the hardest woman to pursue, the hardest to tame. Man, you should appreciate that. Ethan scoffed. Hard to tame? She's been like a little dog following me around for the past 3 years. But you were the one who chased her so hard you were about to marry her, weren't you? Ethan replied coldly. Would you like a dog enough to marry it? The room went silent. After a pause, his indifferent voice sounded again. A wild girl who learns to behave. That's kind of entertaining, isn't it? I hung up and stared into the mirror. My long black hair draped over my arms and collarbone, hiding the faint marks where my tattoos had once been removed. I smiled faintly. The obedient girl, I'd played that part long enough. Ethan hadn't come home for an entire week. I decided to list our house for sale on a real estate platform. Every brick, every corner of that place had been paid for by me. But now I didn't want to keep a single thing. After I finished taking care of everything, he finally called and asked to meet. The dinner party he had arranged was one he showed up to last. And when he finally walked in, the woman behind him was none other than Luna Thompson. Delicate, fragile, and heartbreakingly pitiful. She looked just a little bit like the woman I used to be. He held her hand tightly, as if he was afraid someone might hurt her. His protective stance was flawless. The room suddenly fell silent, but no one dared to speak. Every pair of eyes turned toward me. I said nothing, only lowered my gaze to the red string around my wrist. It was frayed, nearly broken. I tugged slightly at the corner of my lips and smiled faintly. When Ethan Carter brought Luna Thompson to stand before me, he said calmly, Tiffany, I'm not going through with this wedding. I lifted my eyes, looking at him without much expression. You want to call off the engagement? He pulled Luna closer, his hand gripping hers tightly, his gaze full of tenderness, as if she were his whole world. Luna's back, he said softly. I don't want to force myself anymore. No matter how well you imitate her, you'll never be her. You understand, right? I don't love you. I nodded lightly. Yeah. He seemed surprised, as though he couldn't believe how calm I was. Maybe in his mind, I should have been crying, begging, or at least showing some heartbreak. But I didn't. You know, our engagement was arranged by our families, he continued. I've loved Luna for 5 years and waited for her for 3. She's been through so much pain, and I want to give her a home. I started to lose patience. Picking up the handbag beside me, I said flatly, "All right, we're done here." Ethan froze for a moment, then finally spoke again. "I'll handle things with my family. As for yours, take care of it yourself. The wedding next week, it's canceled." I stood up and turned to leave. Just as I reached the door, his voice rang out behind me. "Tiffany." I stopped and turned around. He was still standing where I'd left him, but his hand beside his leg was clenched so tightly that veins stood out. I could see the restraint in his eyes. "You don't have anything you want to say to me?" he asked. I thought for a moment. In truth, I wanted to tell him I was jealous that the person he loved most could come back to him, while the person I loved most never would. But in the end, I simply said quietly, "I wish you both a happy marriage." As the door closed behind me, I heard whispers erupt. "No way. That's all she said?" "Hey Ethan, didn't you say she loved you to death? Why didn't she react at all? Not even a little?" "Shut up." Ethan's angry voice cut through the murmurs. I didn't turn back. I should have realized long ago that Ethan Carter, no matter how similar he looked, was not him, the man I once loved. That man could never have looked away from me to see someone else. Leaving the restaurant, I went straight to a hair salon. The long hair I'd kept for 3 years was cut off, replaced by a short, edgy blue hairstyle. Looking into the mirror, I felt like I was finally myself again. Then, I had a new tattoo inked onto my wrist, one simple French phrase that meant I never backed down. At last, I walked into a small motorcycle shop, the same one I had entered on a cold winter day 3 years ago. Aaron, the mechanic, helped me push a bike out from the garage. From inside, a broad-shouldered, shirtless man came out. When he saw me, his eyes widened in disbelief, and his gaze grew misty. It took him a long time before he finally found his voice. "Tiff, is that really you?" I nodded slightly. "It's me." The young man, tall, at least 6 feet, kept looking at me from one side to the other, as if he still couldn't believe it. "Tiff, how come you're here?" he stammered. I glanced toward the 2 motorcycles displayed at the front of the shop, one black and one white, and couldn't help but smile. "They're still here?" Aaron nodded eagerly. "Yeah, Tiff, I clean them every single day. They look brand new. You could take either of them out anytime." He hesitated, then asked softly, "Where are you planning to go?" Aaron hesitated for a moment before speaking. "How about I call a few of the guys to go with you?" I shook my head. "No need, I just want to ride alone for a while." As I sat on the bike, a familiar feeling washed over me. It had been so long since I last touched the handlebars. It seemed like as long as I stayed off the bike, I could pretend to forget everything that had happened that summer. Without realizing it, my eyes drifted to the black motorcycle parked beside me. Wit, the legendary one. A silhouette flashed through my memory. Aaron followed my gaze, his eyes reddening as his voice grew hoarse. "You're still waiting for Kian, aren't you? His bike. I've kept it exactly as it was. Never touched it. It's right next to yours. I always thought that one day, both of you would ride out again, together." He looked at me, his voice trembling. "Tiff, it's been 3 years. I could wait for you, but can you really wait for him?" I froze for a moment. 3 years, so much time had passed already? They say, if you listen to counterclockwise 1,000 times, you'll meet the person you long for again. I've listened to it 10,000 times, so why hasn't he come back? My throat tightened. I turned away, my nose stinging, but I forced a small smile and said softly, "That's just a lie, Aaron. People who are gone don't come back." With that, I started the engine. He didn't know how many times I'd listened to that song, so many that I memorized every note, every word. Yet the one I was waiting for still never returned. The bike roared through the night, racing up the mountain road. When I reached the peak, I stood at the edge, looking down at the glowing city below. Then I screamed into the wind, "Kian, I did what you told me. I've been good. I even agreed to get married. So why haven't you come back?" Tears spilled uncontrollably, cold against my cheeks. "You liar," I whispered through the sobs. "You promised you'd wait to see me in my wedding dress. Look, my wedding dress is right here. But in the end, I could only wear it for myself, and it didn't even fit." My voice broke as I cried harder. "I've eaten well, lived well, done everything right, but it still doesn't fit. Can you just hold me, please? The wind's too strong, I'm so tired. The barren mountain top was bathed in soft silver light. Under the pale moon, everything seemed strangely gentle. Then I heard it, a faint sound behind me. My heart skipped. I turned around sharply, but there was no one there, only the quiet hum of crickets in the dark. I wiped my tears, took a deep breath, and steadied myself before heading back down the mountain. But when I reached the shop, something felt wrong. The black Kawasaki motorcycle, his bike, was gone. My heart dropped. I killed the engine and ran inside, calling out loudly, "Aaron, where's the bike? Who took it?" Before he could answer, a motorcycle horn blared behind me. My pulse quickened, my breath caught. I didn't know why, but tears instantly filled my eyes. My hand trembled as I pressed it against my chest and slowly turned around. Under the dim yellow glow of the streetlight, a tall figure leaned casually against the black motorcycle. Black jacket, black jeans, sharp eyes that hadn't changed at all. That same arrogant, defiant energy, exactly as I remembered. He raised an eyebrow, and that familiar voice, lazy and teasing, cut through the still night air. "My little chili pepper, why are you still so quick to cry?" In that instant, it felt as if time itself had turned back to the first day I met him. I was 15. My parents were fighting again because I refused to obey them. They took out their anger on me, hitting me hard, but all I ever wanted was for them to stop tormenting each other, to just divorce and set each other free. What did I do wrong? I ran out of the house and hid in a quiet corner, crying alone. Between sobs, I suddenly heard a lazy, playful voice. Well, whose little chili pepper's hiding here, crying all by herself?" I looked up. A boy stood there, hands tucked behind his head, casual and carefree. He stretched, then sat down beside me and handed me a tissue. "Crying alone feels awful," he said. "You can talk to me if you want. I don't know who you are anyway. I'll just be someone who listens." We were both 15 that year. I never told him why I was crying, but he sat beside me in silence the whole afternoon. Later, I found out who he was, the notorious troublemaker from the neighboring high school. They said he fought brutally and never backed down from anyone. People said Keon was an illegitimate child, one without a father. Maybe it was fate, but as time passed, the two of us grew closer. He took me to the mountaintop to watch the stars, introduced me to all his friends, and gave me the warmth I'd never received from my own family. Everything I lacked at home, he gave me. He taught me to live true to myself, to never hide who I was, because one day, someone would love me simply for being me. Every time I fought with my parents, he would appear, silently wrapping his arms around me until the anger and pain faded away. He even defended me against anyone who dared to badmouth me, those who said I wasn't a good girl. He told me once, "Tiffany, no one has the right to define whether a person is good or bad, and no one has the right to judge you. You're you, and that's enough." And I protected him too. I was always ready to stand up to anyone who called him a bastard. When he went quiet, I stayed by his side in silence. I told him, "Keon, you don't have to try to become someone else. Just existing, just being you is already enough." People always said Keon Diaz was arrogant and cold, that no one could get close to him. But only with me did he ever show his gentle side. It felt like two lost souls, drifting in the vast ocean, finally finding the place they belonged. We grew inseparable. After graduating high school, we fell in love. That night, our whole group rode our bikes to the top of the mountain, shouting into the night with the wild joy of youth. Amid the laughter and cheers, Keon quietly grabbed my hand and pulled me away. All I could hear was our heartbeats, our breathing, and the wind rushing around us. Under the wide open sky, I asked softly, "Keon, does this feel like we're running away?" I still remember that summer night vividly, the roundest moon, the brightest stars, the loudest cicadas, and his eyes, sincere and full of light. Beneath that starlit sky, we held each other, kissed each other, as if that fleeting moment could last forever. And now, he was back. My throat tightened as I choked out the words, "Keon, you're finally back. I've missed you so much." My body trembled, even my voice quivered uncontrollably. He smiled faintly. "Why are you crying again? Come here. Let me hold you." I rushed forward, but the figure in front of me wasn't him. It was Aaron, pushing the motorcycle toward me. "Tiff," he called, confused. "Why are you crying? Didn't you say Keon's bike would never be ridden alone? It always went wherever yours did. When I saw you leave, I just thought I'd roll his out and start it up for a bit. I froze. So, it had all just been in my head? Turning my back to him, I quietly wiped away my tears. People say that if you meet someone too perfect when you're young, no one else will ever compare for the rest of your life. Maybe I had held on too tightly. 3 years had passed, and still, I hadn't been able to accept reality. I was still foolishly hoping for a miracle. When I got home, everyone was already waiting for me. My mother nearly fainted when she saw my short blue hair and biker outfit. "Look at yourself," she yelled. "Do you even look like a proper woman anymore? No wonder Ethan Carter doesn't want you." I stood at the doorway, suddenly unwilling to step inside. I turned to leave, but my father's cold voice stopped me. "Where do you think you're going? Get back in here and call the Carters to apologize. Tell them you won't marry anyone but Ethan. The invitations have already been sent. How could you cancel the wedding like this? And another thing, dye that ridiculous hair back right now. You know the Carters don't like flashy women." I stepped inside slowly, facing both of them, and then, I laughed. Why should I apologize? He's the one who wanted to take care of his ex. He's the one who called off the engagement. I accepted his decision, so tell me, what exactly did I do wrong? My father shot up from his chair. My father's hand struck across my face, sharp and heavy. "You fool," he shouted. "That idiot lost his mind, and you're just as stupid. Can't you think for once? Do you really believe the Carter family would ever accept a divorced woman?" My cheek burned, but he didn't stop. "Even if he has a mistress, so what? Everyone in our circle turns a blind eye to things like that. As long as your position as Mrs. Carter stays secure, what's there for you to be upset about?" I gently touched my stinging cheek and lifted my head, forcing a cold smile. "Maybe the two of you can tolerate that kind of marriage," I said quietly, "but I can't." My father's chest heaved with anger. He grabbed the glass on the table and hurled it at me. "So what if that bastard's dead? It's been 3 years, and you still can't forget him? Are you planning to stay faithful to a ghost forever, Tiffany Nguyen? I'll say it again, this engagement will not be cancelled. Even if you die, you'll die as a Carter." I didn't have time to dodge. The glass shattered against the floor, a shard grazing my temple and cutting deep just above my brow. Warm blood trickled down my face, and in that instant, memories flooded back of Keon and the day he plunged off the cliff during that final race. After he died, I fell into a deep depression. Both my arms bore the scars of self-harm. If the maid hadn't found me in time, I might not be alive today. When I survived, my parents didn't comfort me. They only said coldly that I was being dramatic. "What does a spoiled rich girl like you have to be depressed about?" They never understood me. They never cared. Ever since I was little, both of them had families of their own outside this house. I never understood, if they didn't love each other, why did they bring me into this world at all? When our family business hit a crisis, they wanted me to marry into the Carter family. I refused, so they threw Ethan Carter's photo at me and said coldly, "Stop pretending. If you really want to die, then go ahead." I looked down at that photo, and for one brief, painful moment, I thought Keon had come back. Ethan looked so much like him, especially the eyes. They were the same kind of eyes you'd see in someone drowning who just spotted a lifeline. So I agreed to meet him. And because they told me the Carter family disliked flashy women, I obediently dyed my hair black again. I just wanted to stay close to him. Even if all I could do was look at that face, it was enough. What I didn't expect was that Ethan would be the one to approach me first. He was the one who gave me his number, who started the connection between us. That was how we ended up together. But later, I learned the truth. He only saw me as a replacement. We were both using each other. He said he liked girls with long hair, so I grew mine out. He said he liked white dresses, so I wore them. He said he didn't like girls who smoked, so I quit. When he told me not to ride my motorcycle anymore, I listened. To everyone else, I had changed. The wild, reckless Tiffany Nguyen had turned soft and gentle, all because of him. Even Ethan himself believed it. But what else could I have done? Without that face, I had no reason left to keep living. So no matter how many times he crossed the line, I forgave him. Because every time I looked at him, I could almost believe Keon was still here, still by my side, never gone at all. until the day the woman he truly loved came back. From that moment on, I vanished from his eyes completely. That was when I finally woke up from my dream. No matter how much he resembled Keon, Ethan Carter would never be him. That night, just before I went to bed, my phone rang. It was Ethan. "My parents just got a call from yours," he said. Then I remembered, earlier that day, I had posted my first photo in 3 years, a picture of me and my motorcycle. Right under my post, a friend had commented, "So cool." And just below that, there was another comment from Ethan Carter himself. "Who would ever like a reckless girl like that? She's really not the type to marry." I cut him off before he could continue. "Don't worry, Ethan. You're not the only one who wants to call off the wedding. It's just a little unfortunate that I'll never get to see that gentle look in your eyes again." He went silent for a moment before letting out a low, mocking laugh. "Tiffany Nguyen, if you can accept Luna's presence in my life, I could reluctantly marry you. But don't expect me to love you. Understand? It's just to appease our parents. You love me so desperately, and your family needs mine. I can help you fulfill your dream." I ran my fingers over the tattoo on my wrist and smiled faintly. "If you truly intend to marry me, Ethan, does Luna know about this?" There was no reply, just the sound of his uneven breathing through the phone. I let out a soft laugh. "Ethan, I know you see me as Luna's replacement, but what a coincidence. I see you as someone else too. Do you know when you resemble him the most?" A lazy smile flickered in my mind, the smile of Keon Diaz. "It's when you're silent, just quietly looking at me. Even though I know you're not really seeing me, you're seeing her through me. I don't feel sad. Just seeing your face is enough." I took a deep breath and spoke calmly. "So, no matter how many things you made me do that I didn't like, I couldn't be angry. But you were right. No matter how hard I try, I can't become her. And no matter how much you resemble him, you'll never be him. So this game we've been playing, we're even now. I don't owe you anything, and I don't love you." I paused. "Let's cancel the wedding." Before I could finish, Ethan hung up on me abruptly. I stared at my phone screen for a long moment, then reached for 2 sleeping pills. Only in dreams could I see Keon again. Only there could I return to those dazzling 4 years of love we shared. After the college entrance exams, under the cheers of all our friends, we officially became a couple. Do you know what it feels like? To hold hands with the person you love, to walk down the street together, to share a cup of milk tea, to watch a movie in silence, and still feel like the air between you is sweet? We could ride our motorcycles freely, racing through endless roads under the open sky. Aaron once said, "You and Keon are the most beautiful couple I've ever seen. Just standing next to each other, you look like you walked straight out of a romance movie." I laughed and teased him. "If you can compliment like that, say more." Keon just shoved his hands into his pockets, leaned lazily against his bike, and watched me joke around with our friends. That was his way, quiet, calm, but his eyes always followed me. Later, we got into the same university. Together, we formed a racing team and entered countless competitions. The professors said Keon had a natural charisma. His name showed up on the university confession board every day. When class ended, girls would wait outside just to hand him love letters. Afraid I might get jealous, he went and bribed the campus radio station. Every day, they'd play love letters he'd written to me. I'd get goosebumps every single time I heard them, and he'd laugh while hugging me. "If you don't get tired of hearing them, I'll never get tired of writing them. I'll write you one every single day." Everyone thought a couple like us wouldn't last long. But against all odds, we were together for 4 years, until my parents found out. That day, they called me home, furious beyond control. They ordered me to break up with that bastard child. I refused. My father was so enraged he grabbed a cane and raised it to strike me. I lifted my chin, meeting his eyes without fear. "You both already have your own families," I said steadily. "All these years, neither of you has ever cared about me," I said, my voice trembling with anger. "So what right do you have to interfere in my life now? I've had enough of your hypocrisy. In your eyes, what am I exactly? A tool? A bargaining chip you can trade away whenever you please?" My father roared, "I gave you life. You'll never escape the fate I decide for you." My mother's voice was cold and sharp. "I've spoiled you too much, that's why you've forgotten your place. How dare you talk to us like that? Is that bastard the one who taught you these things? The cane was already raised, about to come down on me, when suddenly, a familiar figure burst through the door. Kian Diaz. He pulled me behind him and stood in front of me, shielding me completely. All these years, he said, his voice low but firm, you've never cared about her, not once. You've never shown her any real affection. So what gives you the right to demand her obedience now? He stared at them, eyes burning with resolve. She's the one I love the most. If you don't love her, then I will. If you don't need her, then I do. That day, Kian took my hand and led me out of that house. We didn't say a word, but that night, he held me in his arms until morning. We made a promise. After graduation, we would get married. But as graduation approached, I began to notice someone following me. Sometimes, while walking down the street, a flower pot would suddenly fall from above. Kian grew quieter, always lost in thought, as if he was carrying some heavy burden. Then one day, out of nowhere, he asked, Tiff, if one day I'm not here anymore, what would you do? Without hesitation, I answered, I'd go with you. I'm not joking, he said. Neither am I whispered. Before 15, I didn't have a family. I didn't have friends. I was rebellious, angry, and I didn't know what living meant. But since meeting you, you became my salvation. I never imagined everything would end like that. What would I do if Kian wasn't by my side anymore? He sighed, his voice deep and gentle. Even if I'm gone, you have to live well. Find someone who loves you. Get married, have kids. Promise me that. I wrapped my arms around his waist tightly and pouted. What nonsense are you talking about? For the rest of my life, I'll never wear a wedding dress for anyone but you. He chuckled softly, rubbing my head. My princess, I wouldn't dare ask you to. I looked up at him, half joking, half serious. You'd better not, or I'll marry some random guy just to make you regret it forever. He laughed again, his tone warm and teasing. If you ever do get married, and the groom isn't me, I'll come and steal you away. Kian once told me he'd win for my sake, that he'd kneel before thousands with a championship trophy and a ring, giving me the grandest proposal anyone had ever seen. But I never imagined that would be his final race. In my dream, everything blurred. There was only a fog-covered forest, the roar of the crowd echoing in my ears, and the suffocating heat of that summer day. Then, on the giant screen I saw it, his motorcycle plunging into the ravine, flames erupting, the world burning red. And then, silence. My world turned soundless. I woke up with a gasp, my back drenched in sweat. My phone buzzed. It was Aaron. Tiff, he said, there's a street race on the mountain this afternoon. Everyone's gonna be there. You coming? I lifted my head, looking at the sky outside. Yeah, I said softly. Of course. This wasn't my home turf anymore, but maybe it was finally time to move forward. Aaron continued, this one's just a small local race. The big international one's in 2 days. Do you want to join the race? Aaron asked, excitement gleaming in his eyes. Blondie and the others are already there. I leaned against my bike, lit a cigarette, and took a slow, deep drag. Let's go. It's about time I warmed up my hands again. Word was that this race had drawn many famous riders, especially one mysterious black rider from overseas. His performances were so extraordinary that he had become a legend in the racing world. The only pity was that he never took off his helmet. No one knew what he looked like. If I ever meet him, Aaron said eagerly, I swear I'm getting his autograph. I exhaled a stream of smoke and smirked. Look at you. Fine, next time I'll get you the championship trophy myself. Aaron's eyes grew red. Tiff, seeing you like this again makes me really happy. I patted his shoulder and took the last drag from my cigarette. When I turned around, my gaze unexpectedly met Ethan Carter's. For a split second, I could see it. His eyes lit up the moment he saw me. Tiffany Nguyen, he said quietly. I ignored him, flicked my cigarette to the ground, and turned to leave. But before I could, he grabbed my wrist. We need to talk. He stood in front of me, blocking out the sunlight. All I could see was his shadow falling over me. I looked at his face silently. It was still so painfully familiar. But the truth was, he wasn't Kian. You should be happy, Ethan, I said flatly. His jaw clenched. Happy? Why should I be happy about being treated like a replacement? Tiffany, do you even have a conscience? I stared at the anger burning in his red-rimmed eyes. No wonder, he continued bitterly. No wonder every time you looked at me, your eyes seemed to be searching for something you'd lost. No wonder you stared blankly at me, tears falling down your cheeks. I actually thought you loved me. I was stupid enough to feel sorry for you, to agree to our parents' marriage arrangement. Turns out I was just a fool. I waited for him to finish before replying calmly. But Ethan, didn't you see me as someone's replacement too? The woman you love has already come back. You don't need to keep pretending with me anymore. This double game, it's over. Ethan stepped closer, his expression darkening. His grip tightened so hard I thought he might crush my shoulders, and I instinctively stepped back. Even if you were just a replacement, he said harshly, you still became obedient because of me, didn't you? Would you have changed like that for him? I thought for a moment, then answered quietly, no. I only hoped that if I ever got married, he'd keep his promise and come to take me away. That's the last piece of him I still hold on to. Ethan's eyes narrowed, his voice turning icy. So you never liked me at all? I looked up at him steadily. You didn't love me, and I didn't love you? Isn't that fair? His face darkened instantly, brows furrowing tight. Fair? Tiffany, you were nothing but a dog at my feet. 6 days from now, when the wedding comes, you'll regret this. I gave him a faint smile. No, I won't. I packed my bags and boarded a flight to Hallaton City. There were only 4 days left until the wedding, but my parents still refused to give up on it. They were clinging to the illusion that Ethan Carter and I could somehow make peace. I looked down at the red string I'd worn on my wrist for 7 years. I'd already decided, after watching this next race, I would return home and end everything once and for all. Now I finally understood that some parents truly never love their children. But I'd made peace with myself. Aaron picked me up from the airport and drove me to the hotel, chattering excitedly. They say the Black Rider's staying at this hotel too. Maybe we'll actually see him. I laughed softly. You really are his biggest fan, huh? Aaron scratched his head. It's not just that. Some of his techniques, they remind me of Kian. My heart skipped a beat. Aaron quickly changed the subject. Come on, Tiff. Let me take you inside. Everyone's missed you. They'll be thrilled to see you at the race. We arrived at the mountain track right before the event began. As I looked around, I saw many familiar faces. People who had once ridden side by side with Kian Diaz. They all carried broken pasts. But it was Kian who had pulled them out of the darkness and given them something to chase for the rest of their lives. Amid the long line of motorcycles, one figure stood out. A man dressed entirely in black racing gear. Aaron pointed excitedly. Tiff, that's him. The distance was too far for me to see clearly, but just as I turned my head, that rider tilted his slightly toward me. A strange, indescribable feeling rushed through me. My hands began to tremble, and my heart pounded so violently it felt like it might burst from my chest. The race began. Aaron shouted, Tiff, he's in the lead. The man shot forward like lightning, accelerating with perfect precision, leaving every competitor far behind. It was as if he had no fear of death, charging ahead at a breathtaking, reckless speed. Suddenly I was back 3 years ago at another race, watching Kian Diaz pull down his helmet and grin at me before saying, I'll bring you the championship trophy and propose with it. Now as I stared at the dark figure on the track, my chest filled with a familiar ache, a blend of hope and heartbreak. I needed an answer. No matter who he really was, I had to see the face beneath that helmet. I grabbed Aaron's hand and ran straight toward the area beneath the winner's podium. Minutes felt like hours, stretching endlessly, like waiting in an airport for a flight you knew would never arrive, yet still refusing to give up hope. Then, the big screen flickered. The Black Rider had crossed the finish line. He was the champion. His name flashed on the leaderboard. It was foreign. The camera zoomed in just as he raised 2 fingers to his lips and gently blew a kiss into the air. In that instant, I felt as if that kiss had fallen right onto my skin. A wave of heat surged through my chest. He followed the crew backstage. I hurried to use my contacts to get in. And finally, I stood right in front of him. I knew it was rude, but I didn't care anymore. I had to see his face. Looking up, I asked in English, "Can you take off your helmet?" He didn't move. He just stood there, silently staring straight at me. That posture, that presence, it was too familiar. My heart raced uncontrollably. Then he finally spoke, his voice deep and calm. Sorry. Just one word. Sorry. And the world around me turned unbearably cold. So it really wasn't him, right? Memories came crashing back. I remembered that summer when Kian had asked me, if one day I'm not here anymore, what will you do? And I had said without hesitation, I'll go with you. But in the end, I couldn't die with him. My head bowed, my lips trembled. There was nothing left to hope for anymore. I turned to leave, but then a hand caught my wrist. I froze. My gaze drifted down from his long fingers to his wrist, where veins stood out against his skin. There, around his wrist, was a red string, old, frayed, and nearly broken. The same as mine. My mind went blank. A single tear fell onto the back of his hand. In front of me, he slowly reached up and removed his helmet. That face, the face I had dreamed of for 3 long years, appeared before me. The familiar smirk at the corner of his lips hadn't changed one bit. It was Kian. My heart stopped. I wanted to say, I missed you so much, but no sound came out. Only then did I truly understand what it meant to be so overwhelmed you couldn't speak. 3 years had passed, yet he looked almost exactly the same, still the man I had loved so deeply. But something was different. I couldn't tell what. Maybe that's why my vision blurred as I looked at him. Under the dazzling lights, Kian Diaz stood there, bathed in gold. Against the glow, he looked unreal, like a dream stepping out of the past. His eyes narrowed slightly, a faint glimmer of amusement flickering in them. The corners of his lips curved into that familiar smirk. "My little chili pepper," he teased softly, "how could you not recognize me?" And just like that, all the walls I'd built inside me crumbled. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I threw myself into his arms and burst into tears, the kind that shook my whole body. "Why? Why did it take you so long to come back?" He chuckled quietly, his hand gently patting my back. "I heard my little troublemaker was about to get married, and to someone who wasn't me. Of course, I had to come back to steal the bride." His voice was calm, even playful, but I could hear it, the slight tremor underneath, the quiet strain he was trying to hide. He held me tightly, pressed a soft kiss to my hair, and I clung to him, sobbing harder. I was terrified that if I loosened my grip even a little, he would disappear again, that this would all turn out to be just another dream I'd imagined to fill the loneliness. I didn't want to wake up, not yet. Even if it was only a dream, please, let me stay here a little longer. Then he whispered into my ear, his breath warm against my skin. "I'm sorry, I once promised I'd win the championship and propose to you, but I'm 3 years late, do you blame me?" I shook my head, my voice trembling. "No. I don't blame you. As long as you came back, that's enough for me. I don't need anything else. I just need you." That day, during the award ceremony, he stood before everyone, tall and radiant under the lights, and handed me the championship trophy. And then, in front of the crowd, he took out an engagement ring, 3 years late. As I looked up at him, my vision overlapped with memories from long ago, the promise he once made, the dream we thought had died, and now, finally, its beautiful conclusion. That night we poured 3 years of longing into each other, filling every empty space that time had carved between us, with tears, sweat, kisses, and the warmth of skin against skin. Neither of us wanted to stop. Only when I was nestled in his arms, completely spent, did he finally start telling me what had happened during those missing years. A story so absurd, so cruel, it barely felt real. He and Ethan Carter were blood brothers. His mother, once a high society heiress, had fallen deeply in love with their father. But Ethan's mother had interfered, drugging their father and forcing him into responsibility when she became pregnant. She schemed and manipulated her way into becoming the legal wife. Unable to endure the betrayal, Kian's mother left in heartbreak, only to discover later that she was also carrying a child. Years passed. When Ethan's mother found out about Kian and his mother, she began using every vicious method imaginable to crush them. That cruelty planted something dark inside Kian's mother, an unrelenting thirst for revenge. She started grooming him to rise, to become powerful enough to reclaim everything she had lost. She took him overseas and forced him to inherit her brother's business empire. But the Carter family wasn't going to stand by idly, and because of me, his mother made her move. In that moment, I remembered all those times I'd felt someone following me, the near accidents, the shadow that seemed to always lurk nearby, and suddenly, everything made sense. Kian had begged her to leave me out of it, but she was obsessed, beyond reason. So she made him a deal. If he wanted me to stay safe, he had to disappear from my life. So the accident was staged. The explosion, the fall, all of it carefully arranged. He had been forced to leave the country. For 3 long years, he barely slept a few hours each night, throwing himself into work, determined to return to me as soon as he could. His voice broke as he spoke. "You have no idea how much I missed you." He told the story as if it belonged to someone else, as if the pain wasn't his own, as though by keeping it distant, he could protect me from feeling it. He told me about the endless days learning to run a company from scratch, about proving himself to men who wanted him to fail, about breaking free from his mother's control piece by piece. He hadn't dared to think of me, hadn't dared to reach out, because every part of that struggle was for my safety. It only took him minutes to tell the story, but I could feel the weight of those years in every word. The exhaustion, the loneliness, the quiet endurance. To stand here in front of me again, he had sacrificed everything. I wrapped my arms around him, holding him as tightly as I could, as if to make up for all the time we had lost. He tightened his arms around me as if trying to carve my existence into his very bones. "Every time I missed you to the point of going insane," he said hoarsely, "I'd stab my wrist with a pen, just to remind myself I had to hurry, had to succeed faster. Because if I didn't, my girl wouldn't be able to wait any longer. I promised I'd bring you the championship trophy and propose. I couldn't break that promise. I said I'd marry you, and I knew my silly girl would wait for me, right?" He gave a quiet laugh, his eyes soft but filled with exhaustion. "So I worked like a madman, studied, fought, clawed my way out from under her control step by step, just so I could stand in front of you again. I knew. I could feel every word. My tears had dried, only to fall again, like all the emotions I'd buried for 3 years had finally burst free." He cupped my face, his thumb brushing away the tears, before pressing a gentle kiss to my forehead. "My stubborn little girl," he murmured. "Will you marry me?" There were only 3 days left until the wedding that was supposed to happen between me and Ethan. I pulled Kian to the registrar's office that very afternoon. When the red seal was stamped on our marriage certificate, over the photo of us smiling together, I laughed and cried all at once. He panicked, wiping my tears. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice trembling. "I'm so sorry, I came back too late." I shook my head, wiping my cheeks with the back of my hand. "As long as it's you in the end," I said softly. "Being late doesn't matter." Around that same time, a photo began circulating through the entire racing community. In it, a slender, fair hand rested on the chest of the most desirable champion racer of the season. His tattooed, veined arm wrapped tightly around the woman's waist. The image was electric, overflowing with intimacy. It turned out Aaron's friends had taken the picture after the race ended. No one knew how, but somehow it had gone viral, spreading like wildfire across every racer's feed. The moment it hit the group chat, chaos broke out. "Wait, doesn't that girl look exactly like Tiffany Nguyen? No way, that can't be her. Tiffany's supposed to be that elegant, long-haired debutante, right? Since when does she have short blue hair and wear tank tops like a biker chick? Actually, I think that was what she used to look like before she got engaged to Ethan. The guy in the picture, he kinda looks like Ethan Carter, doesn't he? Are you kidding? When did Ethan ever know how to race? No, not Ethan. It's some foreign racer. But damn, the two of them look perfect together." Funny thing, Ethan was drinking with us last night, bragging that before the wedding, Tiffany would come crawling back to him, begging to marry him. Ha, so the almighty Ethan really thought she couldn't live without him, and turns out he was the one being replaced. At that exact moment, I was in the fitting room, staring at the wedding gown Kian had secretly commissioned years ago, a custom piece flown in from overseas. My phone rang. It was Ethan. "Tiffany Nguyen," his voice barked through the line. "Who the hell is he?" I was adjusting the train of my gown when Kian caught my gaze and smirked lazily. Taking the phone from my hand, he lifted it to his ear. "Old friend," he drawled, his voice smooth and calm. "Let me introduce myself. I'm her lawful husband." Then he hung up without another word. Later that day, we met up with everyone from the old crew. Together, we rode our beloved bikes up the winding mountain roads. The roar of engines, the rush of wind against our faces, the laughter and tears mixing in the night, It all felt like our youth had never been stolen from us. Kian rode behind me, his hand gripping mine tightly, as though afraid I'd slip away again. It felt like we were 18 all over again, running wild beneath the stars. He leaned close, his voice low and teasing against my ear. "Hey, Chili Pepper? Want to run away with me?" My throat tightened, my eyes stung. But this time, I was the one who grabbed his hand and pulled him forward. Under the summer night sky, surrounded by the hum of engines and the scent of asphalt, I rose on my toes to kiss him. But before I could, he caught me by the waist, tilted my chin up, and kissed me first, deep and hard. The softness, the heat, the ache, it was all the same as before. But this time, it wasn't about passion. It was about finding each other again after all the lost years. In that moment, it felt as though all the unfinished pieces of our youth, every regret and heartbreak, had finally found their ending. I didn't know if we were meant to save each other, but I knew one thing for sure. Through every journey, every lifetime, I would always find my way back to him. Love has always been the greatest answer. That night, everyone gathered in Aaron's shop, laughing, drinking, teasing each other until dawn. When I woke up, the whole group was still sprawled across the floor, asleep in every corner. The sight filled me with a strange sense of peace, so warm, so real, that I wished I could freeze that moment forever. I was about to step outside for some air when I suddenly saw Ethan Carter sitting on the curb under a streetlight. His once proud posture was gone. He looked wrecked. Around him were piles of cigarette butts and empty liquor bottles. I had no idea how long he'd been there or when he'd come, nor did I want to find out. I didn't want to see him at all. But before I could turn away, he stood up and blocked my path. "Marry me, Tiffany Nguyen," he said hoarsely. He pulled out a family registry book from his jacket pocket. I froze, instinctively stepping back, raising a hand in disbelief. "Ethan," I said calmly, "I'm already married." His eyes darted down to my hand and stopped on the ring glinting under the streetlight. His whole body stiffened. You married that racer?" I nodded. Suddenly his expression twisted with anger. "How could you be so reckless? You've only known him for a few days. What gives him the right?" He cut himself off mid-sentence, voice lowering, gaze darkening with something almost like regret. "The wedding's still scheduled. 2 days from now. Let's just go through with it as planned, okay?" I shook my head and replied evenly. "The wedding isn't canceled. I just changed the groom." He froze, then gave a bitter, hollow laugh. "That racer of yours, if he ever finds out you only saw him as a replacement, he'll divorce you in a heartbeat." His tone turned cold, his eyes sharp. "Stop this nonsense, Tiffany. Marrying me is the best choice you'll ever have." He didn't know. Kian wasn't some replacement. He was and always had been the only person I'd ever truly loved. I met Ethan's gaze steadily. "Don't worry," I said softly. "We're not getting divorced." Right then, a familiar voice sounded behind me. Kian slid an arm around my shoulders, pulling me close. He pressed a soft kiss to my lips before glancing at Ethan with a look full of quiet defiance. "Because traitors," he said coolly, "always end up in hell." Ethan stared at him, his face pale as he took in the resemblance between them. Two men who looked almost identical, yet couldn't have been more different. He didn't say another word. He just turned around and walked away, his body hollow, like a man whose soul had already left. 2 days before the wedding, Kian and I were busy revising the guest list, keeping it intimate, only those who mattered most. We wanted a celebration that belonged to us alone. In the middle of all that chaos, I got a call from Lena Tran, Ethan's ex, the one who had returned from abroad. Her voice trembled, and I could even hear her trying to hold back tears. "Can you come see Ethan, please?" she said. "He drank so much he ended up with alcohol poisoning. He's in the hospital." I froze for a second, then answered flatly, "And what does that have to do with me?" On the other end, Lena's voice cracked. I thought he still loved me. I really did. I thought when I came back he'd still be waiting, still want me. And he has been. He's been by my side all week. But he never puts his phone down. He keeps looking at it over and over again. Her voice broke. "I know he was waiting for your call. But you never called, not even once. So he brought me to see you, saying canceling the wedding was just to make you jealous. But you left without even looking back. You don't know, Tiffany. After that, he completely lost it. He's been drinking non-stop, saying your name over and over again. That's when I finally understood. In this cruel game of replacements, he'd fallen into his own trap. He'd fallen in love for real. Knowing I'd chosen someone else, he drank himself numb, clinging to the ghost of a woman who had never loved him. I don't want to hear it, I cut in coldly. I never loved him, not even once. And he never loved me. It wasn't love. It was pride, just pure, pathetic pride. When someone isn't the one in control of a relationship, that's when they start to lose themselves. That was all it ever was. After saying that, I hung up immediately. A day before the wedding, Kian's company made a shocking announcement. It had officially acquired the entire Carter group. Everyone was stunned. It was then that people realized the Carter family had a secret son, one who had lived outside their household all along. But rather than fighting for inheritance, he and his mother had spent years carefully planning to dismantle the Carters from the inside out. That day, the collapse of the Carter empire wasn't the only thing that shook the city. What truly stirred public frenzy was the discovery that Kian Diaz and Ethan Carter looked uncannily alike. And right after the news broke, Kian held a press conference, announcing that he would be marrying his first love the very next day. The world finally pieced everything together. The man who had disappeared from my life and haunted my heart for 3 years, the man I had cried for, waited for, loved with everything I had never truly left. He was Kian, my moonlight, my salvation, the one I had once believed I would never see again. My parents were overjoyed. To them, I had just married into power. They thought they had secured an unshakable foundation for their family. But that same afternoon, I brought Kian home, hand in hand, and stood before them. Calmly, clearly, I said, "From this day forward, Tiffany Nguyen has nothing to do with the Nguyen family." In the past, I had never been brave enough to sever ties completely. I'd trapped myself in cycles of guilt and self-blame. I told myself that because they'd given me life, I owed them gratitude. I had hoped, so foolishly, that one day they would love me, understand me, see me. But now I finally understood. We can't choose how we enter this world. But once we exist, we have the right to live as our own person. Through years of heartbreak and illness, they had only ever watched from afar, never helping, never caring, letting me drown in my own despair. But I didn't need their pity anymore. I didn't need their approval. I already had someone who loved me. Someone who had returned from the edge of death just to keep his promise. They had never once saved me. And if I couldn't have their love, then I no longer wanted anything from them at all. Not everyone in this world is blessed with a loving family. Learning to accept that void, to live despite it, that's part of growing up. When I turned to leave, I saw confusion flicker in their eyes for the first time. But whatever they felt, it no longer mattered to me. On our wedding day, I wore the dress Kian had prepared. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made yesterday. "How did you even know my measurements?" I asked, laughing softly. He pinched my cheek lightly, his tone gentle but scolding, because I knew some stubborn girl wouldn't be eating properly while I was gone. He looked impossibly handsome in his fitted suit, no longer the wild, reckless boy I'd fallen for, but a man, steady, warm, whole. Standing behind me, he wrapped his arms around my waist. I looked into the mirror, saw our reflections intertwined, and my eyes filled with tears. This was the day I had waited for so long. Too long. Kian tilted my chin up and kissed the corner of my eye. "My little chili pepper," he murmured with a teasing smile. "Why do you still cry so easily?" That one simple line, so familiar, so tender, broke me completely. The tears I had held back for years finally spilled over. That night at the foot of the mountain, I had once imagined him saying those exact words to me. Back then, it was only an illusion, but now, the illusion had become real. The man I loved, the one I'd lost through pain and time, had finally come back. The universe hadn't been cruel after all. I leaned up and kissed his forehead, whispering softly. Because now, I knew. There would always be someone to wipe my tears. Someone to watch the spring rain with me, to welcome the summer wind, to see the autumn leaves fall, and to feel the first snow of winter by my side. And so even when I have to walk alone for a while, I'm no longer afraid. Because I know that at the edge of the cliffs, where the wind blows wild and free, the man I love will always be there, waiting for me, smiling gently as he says, "Hello, my love. We meet again." In a love triangle, who do you think ends up hurting the most? Love and Lies story.